So in this video, I'm going to show you how to draw the base for our new LED light. It's very important you do the steps in order so that the shell works out. So I want to quickly take you through that. Part one of this video will show you modeling, and then part two will be setting this up for the 3D printer. So I'm going to go back to the beginning of my part. I'm going to drop end of part in front of extrusion 1. So I started with just a rectangular extrusion. From there, I cut a pocket in for the piece of plexiglass to sit in. The pocket depth, if you look at the drawing, calls for a ½ inch deep on that. Because we're shelling it, we're going to remove that little section afterwards. So I only cut this pocket in 0.4. Then I added on the 4 chamfers around the top edge. Next, I added the 0.25 chamfer on those 4 corners. And at that point, I'm ready to do my shell. So looking at what that looks like on the inside, it's important the shell comes at this order before we do any other work. Then I'm ready to cut out the base. So I'm cutting out that little section so the lights can show through. I'm making some mounting holes next. So right here, you'll see a small mounting hole. I'm not going to make the other side yet. We're going to mirror that. I'm going to make the mounting holes up top. And I'm going to go ahead and mirror that to the other side. And then I'm going to mirror all 3 of those to the other side. So that mirrored all 3 subjects over. And then I'm going to drop this down because we're going to set the base plate inside. And then the last 2 things we're going to do is cut a little notch for the USB wire to come through to power your device. So I'm going to go through this step by step. If you think you can handle it from there, you can use the measured drawing that was provided. But I'm going to take you through step by step on how to create this. So I'm going to go and start a standard IPT, a new part. Once I've opened that new part, I'm going to start a new sketch, and I'm going to start down on one of these work planes. Now I'm going to try to do this a little bit faster by working off my origin. So in the rectangle drop down, I'm going to do a 2-point center rectangle. I'm going to lock onto that origin, and then I'm going to type my sizes in. So 1.75 tab 4.5. And then I'm going to finish my sketch, and I'm going to extrude that a height of 1.5 inches according to the drawing. And then I'm going to make another sketch up on top here. Now notice the origin is centered, which makes it nice for that small opening in the top. So if I look back at my drawing, I have this cut to make in the top here. When we look at that cut, the thickness is 0.225, and my overall length I want is 3.375. So I'm going to use that 2-point rectangle again in order to center that there for me. So I'll grab my center point and pull this out, and this will be my 0.225, and then I'll hit tab to take me to the other direction, and I'll type in my 3.375. So that's perfectly centered because I worked off the origin. So now I can go to extrude. I'm going to extrude this in 0.4. Because we're doing a shell thickness of 0.1, that's going to add the extra ½ inch that I want to see in my drawing. So over on my drawing here, if we look at the section view, I want this wall to come down a ½ inch. We're going to have a shell thickness that fills in here, and then we're going to punch that hole out of there. So let's go back over to our part here. So 0.4 is good. I have the cut selected here, and you want to make sure your direction is in the right direction. It should be going into the part. It should look red. All right, at this point, we're ready to put on some chamfers. So I'm going to go to chamfer, and I'm doing a distance option, 2 distances. My first distance is 0.25. And my second distance is going to be 1 inch. And then I'm going to go click on this edge, and I'll hit apply, and then I'll go to the next one, hit apply, next one, hit apply, and last one over here, hit apply. So now I've tapered all those sides down. Now I'm also going to put on a little 45-degree chamfer to run up the edge here. So I'll go back to the chamfer tool, and this time this is going to be just the one distance because they're going to be the same at 0.25. I'll have to select both of these edges on the way up. So there's 8 edges that I'm selecting as I go around my part. So you'll have to orbit around, make sure you get all those. If you get an extra one, so let's say I click this by mistake, hold the control key down and you can unselect that or deselect it. At that point I'm going to hit OK. So this is starting to look pretty good. At this point you're ready to add in your shell. So I'm going to go to shell here, and I'm going to put a thickness in of 0.1. So that's how thick our wall will be. And I'm going to select to remove that top face. So looking down inside of there, you can see what that did. If you've done something else at this point, like if you had holes in it, it's going to shell around those. So that's why we want to do this in the correct order. Now we want to put a hole through here. So I'm going to make a sketch again up on top here. So I'm going to sketch up on this face, and I'm going to say project cut edges. That gives me a yellow line around the edge that I can now use to make an extrusion. So now I can go in, I can grab that, and I can say, okay, I'd like you to cut, and I want you to cut down 0.5, or you could say through all. That should slice this open so we're all the way in the part. Next thing we're going to do is create some mounting holes here. So looking at our drawing, we are going to create these little mounting holes right here. They have an outside radius of 0.125, and they have a hole size of 0.095. That's to fit a number 4 screw. The distance between centers is important, 3.75. So let's go now over here, and we're going to create a sketch right on top of this surface here. And I'm going to create a line to give me my center point. I could really just do this as a circle as well. Tracked off the center would be fine. And I'm going to go ahead and draw that in. I'm going to type in my size, 0.25 for my diameter. And then off the center point, I'm going to put this in. Now, the number that you were given, now that looks a little funny. Let me pull that back up. The number that you were given is, why that graphically looks a little weird there, was 3.75. So I'm going to type in 3.75, and I'm just going to put in divided by 2. So that's going to do the math for me and locate that right in the right spot, which is 1 7/8. It should be centered. We can check that by putting a dimension between these 2 points and seeing if anything happens. If I pull it to the side, we're good to go on that. I'm also going to add in that small circle in the center for the screw that goes through. That's 0.095. And then I'll finish my sketch. And I'll go to extrude. I'm going to select that outer kind of donut shape there, and I'm going to extrude that down to this surface. So you're going to find the 2 option. You're going to select here, and we want to make sure it builds. It looks like it switched to cut. I'm going to go over to join. Notice how it turned green. I'm going to hit OK on that. Now I could draw that on the other side, but we're going to mirror that over in just a little bit. It doesn't poke through on the other side, so we're good to go. Our next sketch is going to be up here on top, so I'm going to go to start my sketch. I'm going to sketch up on this top lip. If I look at my drawing back here, the center point for these holes is going to be 0.3 from the edge on each corner. So if you came down 0.3 and over 0.3, you're going to draw that circle in there, and I want to say that circle is, radius 0.125. And then from this point, you're going to draw a line tangent to that circle. Same hole size, 0.095, and then we'll extrude that to that angled surface. So I am already in my sketch. I'm just going to go ahead and draw my circle. I'm going to make sure I'm not snapped into anything. Okay, I don't want to do that. I just want to make sure I'm drawing free out there. Let me drop that back in position. So I'll just go here, and I'm going to start my circle, 0.25, and then I'm going to add dimensions to locate it properly. So from the center point to the edge, 0.3, and the same thing from the left-hand side over to that center point. Now, I already have it here, so I can click this. It'll add that in, and it'll fix it to that. What's pretty cool there is if at some point I needed to change that dimension to 0.25 or something, so we'll put that in. That will automatically change the other one. Okay, I want to keep that at 0.3 though. All right, I'm going to put the small circle in now. That's on my 0.095. Hit enter on that. And then I'm ready to make an extrusion. So I'm going to select, once again, kind of that donut shape around the outer edge. And this time I'm also going to select 2, but I'm going to select this angled face here. Now, if you notice, this would not be connected to the outside, so that's probably going to be pretty fragile. So let's add a little something else to that sketch. So sketch 5 is what mine was, so I'm going to right click and I'm going to edit my sketch. And I'm going to add in a couple lines here that come right from this corner. So I'm going to grab that corner, I'm going to go out till I get that tangent lock. I'll do the same thing here. Go out and get that tangent lock. And then I'm going to complete my profile by drawing a line between these 2 points. So let's go back and extrude that now. So I have that donut shape plus this little U shape over here. Hopefully it's going to grab that for me. There we go. Once again, we're doing a 2 feature, and we're going to select this angled face for it to extrude to. So I'm going to hit OK on that. That looks pretty good. Now, in order to mirror this over, I need a work plane. My part is 1.75 thick. One of the easiest ways to do this is with a mid-plane. So I will click this face, and then I'll pivot that around, and I'll click this face over here. And now I can simply mirror that over the work plane that was just created. So I'll go to Mirror, I'll select the feature out on the screen. Sometimes it's hard to click. You can always go over to your browser and select it there. I'll click the Mirror Plane button, select that mirror plane, and then I'm going to hit OK. I'm going to mirror all 3 of these features down to the other side. So I need another mid-plane. So I'm going to go to mid-plane again, and I'll select this end, and then down here on this end. There's my new mid-plane. I'll go once again to mirror, and I want to make sure I get all of those features. So I want to get down in there. I want to get this feature here. I want to get this one, and I want to get this over here. And if that doesn't want to work for you out on screen, you can always go back and you can select the mirror that you push that over with. Then I'll go to mirror plane, select that one in the middle, hit OK, and now I have all 3 of those over on the other side. If these planes are in the way, you can always right click on them and go to visibility just to clean them up. You can also turn them off over here in the browser. So right click in visibility. You do not want to delete them because the features are dependent upon those. So now I'm going to make a little cut in here. So we're going to drop that down. If we look at the one that's already completed here, we want to drop this down so that the base plate can be concealed inside of that. So I'm going to create a new sketch up on top once again. And I'm going to go to Project Geometry, and I'm going to get all the outer parts of this because I want to use offset to cut that into the inside. So I get all those 8 faces, then I'll go to offset. I'm going to click and drag to the inside. I'm going to type in 0.1, which was the same as my shell. Now I can go to Finish Sketch, and I can go to Extrude, and I can grab that inner piece. We're going to cut this in a distance of 0.15. That's a little bit thicker than our plywood, so we know that's not going to sit proud. I'm going to hit cut on that, so that should push it down inside. You want to verify that the direction is not in the wrong direction. It's actually cutting. We'll hit OK. That looks good. Now I'm going to make a little recess cut in here for my USB cord. So I'm going to just create a sketch right up on top. And I'm going to create a little, I'm just going to use a 2-point rectangle here, and I'm just going to overdraw the rectangle. So I'm going to make the thickness 1/8 of an inch. Usually works pretty good for the thickness of your rectangle. And I'm going to make sure it's centered by clicking the edge and this center here. And I'm going to make that 0.0625 or 1/16 of an inch. And then we've got to move this up. I don't have any other dimensions on here, so I should be able to just drag these lines up. I'm not worried about it. As long as I'm overcutting, I'm fine. So I'm going to finish my sketch. I'll go to Extrude. I'll grab that, and I'm going to cut this in. We need to cut that in 1/8 of an inch plus our 0.125. And if you don't have a calculator handy, you can put in the 0.125, and then you can just say plus, and then you can type in your 0.125. It'll do the math for you. We want to make sure it's cutting down in that direction. Last little finishing touch here would be to put a fillet inside of here. So I'll go to fillet just so it matches that wire nicely. I'm going to put in 0.0625 because that would be halfway across that cut, and that's just going to give me a nice clean little fillet inside of there. This part's finished. You want to save this at this part as an IPT so we can go back and fix this if we need to, and then in video 2 we're going to pick up with how to make this into an STL and get this ready. Video number 2, we're going to get this ready for the 3D printer.